My daughter-in-law, Emily, just made the gravest mistake of her life. An hour ago, I got a text. Borrowed your old ring for tonight's party, Vivian. Hope you don't mind. I replied, enjoy yourself. But then I called my lawyer, James Carter, and said, file a theft report for item 392, a $5 million blue diamond ring. The police stormed the charity gala where Emily was flaunting my ring, thinking it was some cheap antique she could show off. If you're watching this, hit that subscribe button and let me know where you're tuning in from, because this story will leave you stunned. I'm Vivian, a 60-year-old black woman, and for 3 years, I've been treated like an invisible nuisance in my own home by a daughter-in-law who thought she could outsmart me. I'm Vivian, a 60-year-old black woman who's lived through more than most folks can imagine. My late husband, Harold, and I poured 35 years of love into this house, a 2-story brick beauty in Atlanta with a wraparound porch and a garden that still smells like his favorite magnolias. 5 years ago, he passed, leaving me not just this home, but a secret stash of jewelry and antiques worth over $20 million, locked in a safe behind a sunflower painting in our bedroom. Harold always said, keep it quiet, Viv. Wealth like this brings trouble. So I did. I never flaunted it, never wore the flashy pieces, just kept my head down and lived simply. But trouble found me anyway in the form of my daughter-in-law, Emily, a 30-year-old white woman with a smile sharp enough to cut glass and an attitude that screams, she's better than everyone else. 3 years ago, my son Marcus brought Emily home. I was in the kitchen stirring a pot of collard greens when they walked in. Marcus, my only boy, had that lovesick grin I hadn't seen since he was a teenager. Emily, decked out in a red dress that probably cost more than my car, tossed her blonde hair and gave me a once-over like I was the help. So, this is your mom's place? She said, not even looking at me, her voice dripping with that fake sweetness people use when they're sizing you up. Marcus nodded, all proud, and dropped the bomb. Mom, Emily's pregnant. We're getting married. My heart did a backflip. A grandbaby. I hadn't felt that kind of joy since Harold and I danced at our own wedding. I hugged Marcus, then Emily, who stiffened like I'd just spilled coffee on her dress. That's wonderful, I said, ignoring the way her eyes flicked to the ceiling. I was too busy picturing a little one running through my garden, giggling under the magnolias. I didn't care that they were rushing things. A baby was a blessing, no matter how fast it came. From that moment, I threw myself into the idea of being a grandma. I spent hours in baby stores, picking out tiny onesies with teddy bear prints, a soft blue blanket, and even a rocking horse for the nursery I planned to set up in the guest room. Emily said she'd handle all the doctor visits herself. No need to stress you out, Vivian, she'd say, all syrupy, and came back with ultrasound pictures I pored over like they were sacred. Marcus beamed every time I showed him the crib I'd ordered online. You're gonna spoil this kid rotten, Mom, he teased, and I laughed, already imagining bedtime stories and cookie baking afternoons. But Emily? She was a different story. From the day she moved in, she treated me like I was invisible, or worse, a nuisance. Vivian, can you keep it down? I'm trying to relax, she'd snap while lounging on my couch, scrolling through her phone. Or, Vivian, make me some tea, will you? Like I was her personal maid. She never called me Mom, never even said thank you. At family dinners, she'd talk over me, acting like I wasn't there. Marcus, this house is way too big for just your mom, she said once, right in front of me, her green eyes gleaming like she already owned the place. She'd be so much happier in a senior home, don't you think? Marcus just mumbled, Mom's fine here, and kept eating, his shoulders hunched like he was dodging a fight. I swallowed my hurt, told myself it was just her personality. She was young, maybe a little spoiled, but she was carrying my grandbaby. That made it worth it, right? I'd catch myself staring at the ultrasound pictures taped to my fridge, whispering names to myself. Maybe Maya for a girl, or Harold for a boy. I'd endure anything for that child. Still, something about Emily gnawed at me. The way she'd eye my things when she thought I wasn't looking. One afternoon, I caught her poking around my bedroom, her fingers brushing the edge of the sunflower painting. "Just admiring your decor," she said with a smirk when I walked in, but her eyes were too sharp, too calculating. I started noticing little things, my jewelry box slightly ajar, a drawer not quite closed. I'd ask Marcus if he'd seen anything, but he'd just shrug. "You're probably misplacing stuff, Mom. It happens." His words stung, but I let it go. I didn't want to rock the boat, not with a baby on the way. At one of her fancy charity galas, Emily introduced me to her friends as Marcus's mom, like I was some random guest in my own house. Her friends, all decked out in designer dresses, gave me pitying smiles, like I was some frail old lady they had to tolerate. I stood there in my simple cardigan, clutching a glass of punch, feeling smaller than I ever had. Later, I overheard Emily on the phone in the hallway, her voice low and venomous. "Vivian's got this big house, but she dresses like she shops at a thrift store. It's embarrassing. The sooner we get her out, the better." My chest tightened, but I didn't say a word. I just slipped back to my room, sat on the edge of my bed, and stared at the sunflower painting, wondering how I'd become a stranger in my own home. Every night I'd lie awake, Harold's voice echoing in my head. "Keep it quiet, Viv." He'd trusted me to protect our legacy, but Emily was chipping away at my peace, piece by piece. I started locking my bedroom door, checking my jewelry box daily, but the unease grew. I wanted to believe it was just my imagination, that pregnancy hormones were making Emily act out. But deep down, I knew something was off. I just didn't know how deep the betrayal ran. Not yet. I woke up every morning to the smell of coffee brewing in my own kitchen, but it wasn't me making it anymore. Emily had taken over, not because she wanted to help, but because she liked to call the shots. "Vivian, this coffee's too weak," she'd say, dumping my perfectly good pot into the sink, her manicured nails flashing under the kitchen lights. "Brew another one, will you? And make it quick. I've got a busy day." I'd bite my tongue, nod, and start over, the steam rising like the anger I kept bottled up. 3 years of this, and I was starting to feel like a guest in my own house, the one Harold and I built with every penny we scraped together. But I held on, clinging to the thought of my grandbaby, the little life I believed was growing inside her. Emily's attitude wasn't just annoying, it was calculated. She'd strut around in her emerald green dresses, heels clicking on my hardwood floors, acting like she owned the place. At Sunday dinners, she'd sit at the head of the table, my table, where Harold and I used to laugh over peach cobbler and talk about redecorating. "This place needs a modern touch, Marcus," she'd say, waving a hand at my floral curtains like they were trash. "It's so dated. Don't you think your mom would be happier somewhere simpler, like a nice senior home?" Her smile was all teeth, and Marcus would just shrug, poking at his mashed potatoes. "Mom likes it here," he'd mumble, barely looking up. I'd force a smile, my fork trembling in my hand, and change the subject to the baby. "How's the little one doing, Emily? Any new ultrasound pics?" She'd flash those pictures like a trophy, always quick to pull them out of her purse. "Oh, the baby's perfect," she'd say, her voice syrupy sweet. "I went to the doctor alone again. Didn't want to bother you, Vivian." I'd study the grainy images, my heart swelling at the tiny shape I thought was my grandchild. I'd already bought a stack of onesies, a crib with a mobile that played Twinkle, Twinkle, and a pile of stuffed animals I couldn't resist. Every time I passed the guest room, I'd turned into a nursery. I'd pause, imagining a little voice calling me Grandma. That hope kept me going, even when Emily's words cut deeper than a knife. But the cuts kept coming. One evening, I was setting the table for a family barbecue when Emily walked in, her phone glued to her ear. "Yeah, Gretchen, this house is huge, but it's wasted on Vivian," she said, loud enough for me to hear. "She's too old to keep up with it. Marcus and I could turn it into something amazing." I froze, a stack of plates nearly slipping from my hands. She didn't even glance at me, just kept talking, her voice dripping with disdain. "Once the baby's here, we'll need the space. She'll see it's for the best." I swallowed hard, my throat tight, and kept laying out the silverware, pretending I hadn't heard. But inside, I was boiling. This was my home, where Harold and I raised Marcus, where we danced in the living room to old jazz records, and she was planning to shove me out like yesterday's trash. Marcus wasn't much help. My sweet boy, who used to bring me dandelions from the backyard, had turned into a man who avoided conflict like it was a disease. "Mom, Emily's just stressed," he'd say when I tried to talk to him. "The pregnancy's got her on edge. She doesn't mean it." But I saw the way he looked at her, like she hung the moon, and it broke my heart. He was so wrapped up in her, so convinced she was carrying his child, that he couldn't see how she was tearing us apart. I wanted to shake him, to scream, "Open your eyes, Marcus." But I didn't. I kept quiet, telling myself it was for the baby's sake. Then the little things started piling up. I'd find my dresser drawers slightly open, my jewelry box shifted just an inch from its usual spot. One day, I noticed a pair of pearl earrings, cheap ones but sentimental because Harold gave them to me for my 40th birthday, were missing. I asked Emily if she'd seen them. "Oh, Vivian, you probably misplaced them," she said, rolling her eyes. "You know how forgetful you get." Her tone was so condescending it made my skin crawl. I checked every drawer, every corner, but they were gone. When I mentioned it to Marcus, he sighed. "Mom, you're always losing stuff. Maybe it's time to organize your things better." His words hit like a slap. Was I really getting forgetful, or was something else going on? The worst came at a neighborhood potluck Emily insisted on hosting. She turned my backyard into her personal stage, laughing with her high society friends while I carried trays of cornbread and lemonade. "Vivian, don't hover," she hissed when I offered to refill drinks. "You're making people uncomfortable." Her friends glanced at me, their pitying smiles worse than any insult. I retreated to the kitchen, my hands shaking as I scrubbed dishes that didn't need scrubbing. Later, I overheard her again, this time whispering to a friend by the patio. "Vivian's got no business in a house this big," she said. "Once the baby's born, Marcus will see she needs to go. A retirement home's perfect for someone like her." I stood behind the screen door, my heart pounding, tears stinging my eyes. Someone like her. An old, useless black woman who didn't belong in her own home. That night, I sat in my bedroom, staring at the sunflower painting that hid Harold's safe. His voice echoed in my mind, "Keep it quiet, Viv." But keeping quiet was starting to feel like letting Emily win. I checked my jewelry box again, my fingers brushing over the empty spot where the pearl earrings used to be. Something wasn't right. I could feel it in my bones, like the way you know a storm's coming before the first raindrop falls. Emily was up to something, and I was done pretending it was just my imagination. I locked my door, my hands steady for the first time in weeks, and made a mental note to call James Carter, Harold's old lawyer, in the morning. Whatever Emily was playing at, I wasn't going to let her walk all over me forever. I was wiping down the coffee table in the living room, the scent of lemon polish mixing with the morning air when I saw her. Emily, in her sleek black yoga pants and a designer tank top, slipped into my bedroom like a cat sneaking after a mouse. My stomach twisted. She'd been poking around my things for weeks, but I'd brushed it off, telling myself I was paranoid. Not today. I set the rag down, my heart thumping, and tiptoed toward the hallway. Through the crack in the door, I watched her open my old wooden jewelry box, the one I kept on my dresser for the cheap stuff, the sentimental trinkets Harold gave me over the years. Her fingers danced over the contents, then stopped. She picked up the blue diamond ring, a 6-carat stunner worth $5 million, a gift from Harold for our 25th anniversary. It was tucked in that box to look unassuming, but to anyone with an eye, it was a masterpiece. Emily held it up to the light, her lips curling into that smug smile she always wore, like she'd just won a prize. She slipped it into her pocket, not even glancing around, and strutted out like she owned the place. My hands clenched into fists, nails digging into my palms. That ring wasn't just jewelry. It was Harold's love, our history, locked in a gem most people couldn't dream of. And she took it, like it was nothing. Like I was nothing. An hour later, my cell phone buzzed. Emily's name flashed on the screen, and I braced myself. Her text read, "Borrowed your old ring for tonight's party, Vivian. Hope you don't mind." Hope you don't mind. The nerve of her. She didn't ask, didn't call, just sent a message after she'd already taken it like I was some pushover who'd nod and smile. My blood boiled, but I tapped out a reply, keeping it cool. "Enjoy yourself." I wasn't about to tip her off. Not yet. For 3 years, I'd swallowed her insults, her demands, her sneers, all for the sake of the baby I thought she was carrying. But this crossed a line. She was playing with fire, and I was done getting burned. I paced the kitchen, my sneakers squeaking on the tile. Every step fueled the fire in my chest. I thought about the nursery I'd set up, the tiny clothes I'd folded with care, the ultrasound pictures I'd taped to the fridge. All of it was for a grandchild I believed was coming, a reason to keep the peace. But Emily's text, that casual, arrogant jab, lit a fuse. I wasn't just some old lady she could walk over. I was Vivian, the woman who'd built this home with Harold, who'd kept his secrets safe. And that ring, it was part of a legacy she had no right to touch. I grabbed my phone and dialed James Carter, Harold's lawyer, and the only person who knew about the $20 million collection hidden behind the sunflower painting. "James," I said when he picked up, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "Emily just took the blue diamond ring, inventory item 392, worth $5 million. She didn't ask, just sent a text after the fact like it's no big deal." There was a pause on the line, then James's low chuckle. "Vivian, you sure you want to go there? That's a serious move." I gripped the phone tighter. "She's been treating me like dirt for 3 years, James. Now she's stealing from me. I'm not letting this slide." He cleared his throat. "All right, Viv, that ring's registered, insured, and documented. If she took it without permission, that's theft, plain and simple. You want me to file a report?" I closed my eyes, picturing Emily at that fancy charity gala she was always raving about, probably flashing my ring to her snooty friends, bragging about how she found it in some antique shop. I'd heard her on the phone yesterday, complaining to her sister about needing something show-stopping for her gold dress. "This old thing from Vivian's stash will do," she'd laughed, her voice dripping with disdain. She thought it was just some dusty trinket. She had no idea what she'd taken or who she was messing with. "File the report," I told James, my voice hard as steel. "I want it done before she gets too comfortable showing off my ring." He promised to get the ball rolling, and I hung up, my heart racing but my mind clear. For the first time in years, I felt a spark of the old Vivian, the one who'd stood shoulder to shoulder with Harold, building a life from nothing. Emily thought she could treat me like a doormat, but she was about to learn I wasn't as helpless as she thought. I walked to my bedroom, locked the door, and stood in front of the sunflower painting. My fingers traced the frame, knowing the safe behind it held secrets Emily couldn't even dream of. I'd kept them hidden, just like Harold wanted, but maybe it was time to stop hiding. Emily's text still burned in my mind, her words like a slap. "Hope you don't mind." Oh, I minded. I minded a whole lot. And tonight, at that gala, she was going to find out just how much. I sat in my living room, the hum of the old ceiling fan filling the silence, my cell phone resting on the coffee table like a ticking bomb. I'd just hung up with James Carter, my lawyer, after telling him to report the theft of my $5 million blue diamond ring. Inventory item 392, stolen by my daughter-in-law, Emily, without so much as a whisper of permission. My hands were steady, but my heart was racing, a mix of rage and resolve pumping through me. For 3 years, I'd let Emily walk all over me, treating me like some old relic in my own home. But taking Harold's ring? That was a step too far, and I was done playing nice. I pictured her at that charity gala, all dolled up in her gold dress, flashing my ring to her high society friends, probably spinning some lie about snagging it at an antique shop. She thought she was untouchable. She was dead wrong. An hour later, my phone lit up with Marcus's name. I braced myself and answered, "Mom, what the hell's going on?" His voice was shaking, high-pitched with panic. "The police just stormed Emily's gala. They're saying she stole a $5 million ring. Mom, what ring? What are you doing?" I leaned back in my armchair, the same one where Harold and I used to sip coffee and plan our future. "Marcus," I said, keeping my voice calm, "your wife took my blue diamond ring from my jewelry box without asking. It's worth exactly $5 million, and I told James to report it as theft." There was a long silence, then a choked, "$5 million? Mom, are you serious? You've got something like that just lying around?" I could hear the chaos in the background, shouts, footsteps, maybe even Emily's voice, shrill and desperate. "There's a lot you don't know about your father and me," I said, my tone steady but sharp. "That ring was part of his collection, locked away for a reason. Emily didn't borrow it, she stole it." Marcus sputtered, "But she said she got your okay. She showed me the text she sent you." I laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Oh, she sent a text after she took it, Marcus. Like I'm some pushover who'd just shrug and say, 'Sure, take my priceless heirloom.'" "Mom, this has to be a mistake," he pleaded. "Emily's freaking out. They've got her in cuffs in front of everyone. Her friends, her colleagues. They're saying she's a thief." I closed my eyes, picturing the scene. Emily, her perfect makeup smudged, her gold dress wrinkled, caught red-handed with my ring glinting on her finger. I'd heard her on the phone yesterday, bragging to her sister about how she'd found the perfect accessory in my dusty old box. She'd laughed, said it was just some tacky antique that'd make her the star of the gala. Now, she was learning the hard way what that tacky antique was worth. "Marcus," I said, my voice low, "this isn't a mistake. Your wife took something that didn't belong to her. She's been treating me like trash for years, and I'm done letting it slide." He went quiet, and I could almost see him running a hand through his hair, the way he did when he was stressed. "Mom, please," he finally said. "Can you talk to the police? Tell them it was a misunderstanding? Emily's humiliated. Her friends are recording it. Videos are probably all over social media by now." I stood up, my sneakers silent on the hardwood floor, and walked to the window. The magnolia trees in the garden swayed gently, a reminder of the life Harold and I had built. "Her reputation?" I repeated, my voice tight. "What about the 3 years she's made me feel like a nobody in my own house? What about the time she told you I should be shipped off to a senior home? What about that, Marcus?" He didn't answer. He knew I was right. He'd heard her snide comments, seen her roll her eyes when I spoke, and he'd done nothing. His silence was louder than any excuse he could have made. "Mom, I didn't know you had anything that valuable," he said finally, his voice small. "Why didn't you tell me?" I sighed, my fingers brushing the curtain. "Your father wanted it kept quiet, Marcus. He knew wealth like that brings trouble. Looks like he was right." I could hear him struggling to process it, the boy who'd grown up thinking we were just a regular family now learning his parents had a secret fortune. "Just don't let this ruin everything," he whispered. "Emily's my wife, Mom." I gripped the curtain, my knuckles whitening. "She's your wife, but she's been walking all over me since the day she moved in, and now she's a thief. You figure out what that means, Marcus." I hung up before he could argue, my pulse pounding in my ears. For the first time in years, I felt alive, like the Vivian who'd fought tooth and nail alongside Harold to build this life. Emily thought she could take what was mine and get away with it. She was about to find out who she was dealing with. I sat back down, staring at the sunflower painting that hid the safe. James had promised the police would move fast. Grand larceny wasn't something they messed around with. I imagined Emily at the gala, her smug smile fading as the cops closed in, her lies about buying the ring falling apart. She'd crossed me one too many times, and now the consequences were crashing in. I wasn't just fighting for a ring, I was fighting for my dignity, for the home Harold and I had poured our hearts into, and I wasn't backing down. I pulled up to the Grand Plaza Hotel, my old Buick humming under the neon lights of the entrance. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady on the wheel. James Carter, my lawyer, sat beside me, a thick folder of documents in his lap. Proof that the $5 million blue diamond ring Emily stole was mine, down to the last carat. I'd spent 3 years biting my tongue while she treated me like dirt, but tonight I was done being invisible. The police had crashed her fancy charity gala an hour ago, and now Emily was in cuffs, caught red-handed with my ring. Marcus's panicked call still echoed in my head, his voice begging me to call it a misunderstanding. But I wasn't here to save her. I was here to lay it all bare. The hotel lobby was a circus. Flashing police lights spilled through the glass doors, and a crowd of gala guests milled around, whispering and pointing. I stepped inside, James at my side, and spotted Emily right away. She was slumped on a velvet sofa, her gold dress wrinkled, her wrists cuffed in front of her. The ring was gone from her finger, probably bagged as evidence. Her perfect blonde hair was a mess, and her mascara streaked down her cheeks, but she still had that defiant glint in her eyes. Marcus stood nearby arguing with a detective, his face pale and his tie loosened. When he saw me, he froze, then stormed over, his voice low but desperate. "Mom, you've got to fix this. They're treating Emily like a criminal." I raised an eyebrow, my arms crossed. "That's because she is one, Marcus. She stole a $5 million ring from my jewelry box without asking." Emily's head snapped up and she shouted from the sofa, "That's a lie. This isn't your ring. I bought it at an antique shop downtown. Check the receipt." Her voice was shrill, but I caught the flicker of panic in her eyes. She was grasping at straws, and it showed. I stepped closer, my sneakers silent on the marble floor, and looked her dead in the eye. "An antique shop, huh? Funny how you texted me after you took it, saying you borrowed my old ring. You thought it was some cheap trinket, didn't you?" James stepped forward, opening his folder with a calm that cut through the chaos. "Detective," he said, handing over a stack of papers, "this is the certificate of authenticity for item 392, a 6-carat blue diamond ring, purchased by Vivian's late husband, Harold, in 1995. It's insured for $5 million and registered in Vivian's name." The detective, a woman with a no-nonsense ponytail, skimmed the documents and nodded. "Looks legit," she said, glancing at Emily. "You got that receipt you mentioned, ma'am?" Emily's mouth opened, then closed, her face turning ashen. She stammered, I must have misplaced it." The crowd murmured, phone still recording, and I felt a surge of satisfaction. She was caught, and her lies were falling apart. Marcus grabbed my arm, his eyes wild. "Mom, why didn't you tell me you had something like this? Emily thought it was just some old jewelry." I pulled my arm free, my voice low but firm. "Marcus, your wife didn't think anything. She's been snooping through my room for months, moving my drawers, eyeing my things. You think this is the first time she's helped herself to what's mine?" His jaw dropped, and he glanced at Emily, who looked away, her cuffed hands trembling. I could see the gears turning in his head, the first cracks in the perfect image he'd built of his wife. "Vivian, please," Emily called out, her voice cracking. "This is all a big misunderstanding. I'd never steal from you, you know that." I turned to her, my chest tight with years of pent-up anger. "Do I? You've treated me like a nobody since you walked into my house. You've bossed me around, told Marcus I belong in a senior home, and laughed behind my back. And now you've got the nerve to lie to my face?" The lobby went quiet, the crowd hanging on every word. Emily's eyes darted around, searching for an escape, but there was none. For the first time, she wasn't in control, and it showed. Marcus stepped between us, his voice shaking. "Mom, she's my wife. She wouldn't do this on purpose. Just tell the police it was a mistake, and we can sort it out at home." I looked at him, my son, the boy I'd raised to be better than this. "Marcus," I said, my voice steady but heavy, "you've watched her treat me like trash for 3 years. You heard her tell her friends I'm too old to live in my own house, And you did nothing. Now she's stolen from me and you're still defending her?" He flinched, his shoulders sagging, and for a moment I saw the guilt in his eyes, the guilt of a man who'd let his mother down. James put a hand on my shoulder. "Vivian, the police have what they need. You want to press charges or just recover the ring for now?" I looked at Emily, her head bowed, her bravado crumbling. I thought of the nursery I'd built, the onesies I'd folded, the hope I'd poured into a grandchild she'd dangled in front of me. "Press charges," I said, my voice cutting through the air like a blade. "She's not walking away from this." The detective nodded, jotting something down, and Emily let out a choked sob. Marcus stared at me, his face a mix of shock and betrayal, but I didn't back down. This wasn't just about a ring anymore, it was about taking back my dignity, my home, my life. I sat in my living room, the silence heavy after the chaos at the Grand Plaza Hotel. My hands clutched a cup of cold coffee, the same cup I'd been holding since I got home from watching Emily get cuffed. The image of her, gold dress, wrinkled, mascara running, still spitting lies about buying my $5 million ring, was burned into my mind. But it wasn't just the ring. 3 years of her sneers, her orders, her treating me like a nobody in my own house had built up to this moment. I thought that was the worst of it. I was wrong. When James Carter, my lawyer, and Rachel, a private investigator he'd hired, showed up at my door with a thick folder of evidence, I knew my world was about to turn upside down. Rachel sat across from me, her sharp eyes softening as she opened the folder. "Vivian, we've been looking into Emily for 6 months, ever since James noticed your jewelry box kept getting moved." I frowned, my stomach twisting. "Moved? I thought I was just being forgetful." Rachel shook her head. "You weren't. Emily's been stealing from you for 2 years. Small stuff at first, like pearl earrings, a silver bracelet, things you might not miss right away. She's sold them at pawn shops around Atlanta, pocketing about $60,000. My jaw dropped, the coffee cup nearly slipping from my hands. $60,000? My heart pounded as I remembered all the times I'd questioned missing trinkets, only for Emily to roll her eyes and say, "You're getting old, Vivian. Happens to everyone." Marcus, who'd been pacing behind the couch, stopped dead. "What, she's been stealing for 2 years?" His voice cracked, his face pale. Rachel nodded, pulling out photos of Emily at pawn shops, her blonde hair unmistakable under the grainy security cameras. "She was careful," Rachel said. "She'd take pieces you rarely wore, then lie about their origin. Said they were gifts from her aunt, or stuff Marcus bought her." I felt a sharp pain in my chest, like a knife twisting. Every time I'd asked about those missing items, Emily had made me feel like I was losing my mind. And Marcus, my own son, had bought her excuses. But Rachel wasn't done. She leaned forward, her voice steady but heavy. "Vivian, there's more. Emily was never pregnant." The words hit me like a freight train. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. "What do you mean, never pregnant?" I whispered, my eyes darting to the ultrasound pictures still taped to my fridge, the ones I'd studied for hours, dreaming of my grandbaby. Rachel slid a document across the table, a forged medical report. "She faked the ultrasounds," Rachel said. "Went to a clinic alone, paid someone to mock up the images. It was all a lie to get Marcus to marry her, to get her hands on this house, your money, your life." I sank back in my chair, my hands trembling. The nursery I'd built, the onesies I'd folded, the rocking horse I'd bought, they were for a child that never existed. Tears stung my eyes as I looked at Marcus. His face crumpled, and he sank onto the couch, burying his head in his hands. "No," he whispered. She couldn't. But Rachel wasn't letting up. She pulled out more papers, emails between Emily and a shady lawyer specializing in wills. "She was planning to declare you mentally incompetent, Vivian," Rachel said. "She's been documenting your forgetfulness, the stuff she stole, to build a case that you can't manage your estate. She wanted it all when you were gone." My vision blurred, not from tears, but from rage. Emily hadn't just stolen my jewelry, she'd stolen my hope, my trust, my family. I stood up, walked to the fridge, and ripped down the ultrasound pictures, my hands shaking so hard they tore. "She used me," I said, my voice low and raw. "She dangled a fake baby in front of me to keep me quiet while she robbed me blind." Marcus looked up, his eyes red. "Mom, I didn't know. I swear, I thought she was pregnant. I thought—" His voice broke, and he looked away, shame written all over his face. Rachel handed me a recording device. "This is from last week," she said. "Emily talking to her sister." I pressed play, and Emily's voice filled the room, cold and smug. "Vivian's got no clue what she's sitting on. I could take half her stuff and she'd never notice. She's too old to keep track." My blood ran cold. Marcus flinched, his hands clenching into fists. "That's enough," he said, his voice shaking. "I need to see her, now." We drove back to the hotel, where Emily was still being held for questioning. Marcus stormed into the lobby, his jaw tight, and I followed, my heart heavy but my resolve unbreakable. Emily was still on that velvet sofa, her wrists cuffed, her eyes darting around like a trapped animal. When she saw Marcus, she tried to smile, but it faltered when she saw me. "Marcus, baby, tell them it's a mistake," she pleaded. "I didn't steal anything. Vivian's confused. She gave me that ring." Marcus stared at her, his face hard. "You lied to me, Emily, about the baby, about Mom's jewelry, about everything. How could you?" Emily's mouth opened, then closed, her lies crumbling under the weight of his words. I stepped forward, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. "You made me believe I was going to be a grandma, Emily. You let me build a nursery, buy clothes, and dream of a child that never existed. And all the while, you were stealing from me, planning to take everything." Her eyes widened, panic setting in. I didn't mean—" she stammered, but Marcus cut her off. "You meant every word you said to your sister. You thought Mom was too old, too weak to fight back. You were wrong." I looked at Rachel, who nodded. "We've got enough evidence to bury her, Vivian," she said. "Photos, recordings, emails. She's not talking her way out of this." I turned back to Emily, her face pale, her bravado gone. For the first time, she looked small, not like the queen she'd pretended to be. I'd lost a dream today, but I'd gained something too, a fire I hadn't felt in years. Emily had tried to break me, but she'd only made me stronger. I stood in my garden, the scent of magnolias wrapping around me like a warm hug from Harold. It had been a month since the truth about Emily came crashing down, her fake pregnancy, her years of stealing, her plan to declare me incompetent. My heart still ached for the grandchild that never was, but I'd traded tears for purpose. Emily was gone, sentenced to 10 years in prison for grand larceny and fraud, and I was no longer the invisible woman in my own home. I was Vivian, 60 years old and stronger than ever, ready to rebuild what she'd tried to destroy. The morning after Emily's arrest, Marcus came to me, his eyes red from a sleepless night. He sat at my kitchen table, the same one where I'd spent years serving Emily's demands, and looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. "Mom," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "I'm so sorry. I let her walk all over you and I didn't do a damn thing." I reached across, squeezing his hand. "You were blindsided, Marcus. She fooled us both, but we're picking up the pieces now." He nodded, tears spilling over, and promised to make things right. For the first time in years, I felt like I had my son back. I didn't waste time wallowing. With James Carter's help, I took a chunk of Harold's secret $20 million collection and started the Vivian Foundation, a nonprofit to protect seniors from family members who prey on them. I poured $200,000 into it, money Emily would have killed to get her hands on. Within weeks, we were getting calls from elderly folks across Atlanta, grandmas and grandpas who'd been manipulated, stolen from, or pushed out of their own homes. Their stories broke my heart, but they also lit a fire in me. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. Then came the call from a TV producer named Carla. "Vivian, your story's gone viral," she said, her voice crackling with excitement. "That hotel showdown's all over the news. We want you to host a show, Vivian's Voice, to help seniors tell their stories and get justice." I laughed at first, thinking she was joking. Me, a 60-year-old black woman from Atlanta on TV? But Carla was dead serious, and I said yes. The show launched a month later, and suddenly I was getting letters from people across the country. A woman named Ruth wrote, "Your story gave me the guts to confront my son about stealing my savings. Thank you for showing me I'm not alone." Each letter felt like a brick in the new life I was building. Marcus was changing too. He filed for divorce, unable to stay with a woman who'd lied about a baby and robbed his mother blind. One evening, as we sat on the porch sipping sweet tea, he looked at me with a shy grin. "Mom, I met someone. Her name's Nicole. She's different." I raised an eyebrow, bracing for another Emily. But when I met Nicole, I knew she was the real deal. She was a 40-year-old nurse with a warm smile and eyes that didn't judge. "Vivian, I've heard all about you," she said, shaking my hand firmly. "You're an inspiration." For the first time in years, someone saw me. Not Marcus's mom, not an old lady to push aside, but me. Nicole joined us for Sunday dinners, asking about Harold, my garden, and the recipes I'd learned from my own mama. She didn't try to take over. She listened, laughed, and treated me like the matriarch I was. Marcus started coming around more, helping me in the garden, even fixing the creaky porch swing Harold and I used to sit on. One night he hugged me tight and whispered, "I should have stood up for you, Mom. Never again." I hugged him back, feeling the weight of 3 years lift off my shoulders. We were healing, one step at a time. Then, out of the blue, my phone rang. It was a collect call from the state prison. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the screen, then accepted. Emily's voice came through, small and shaky, nothing like the smug tone I'd grown used to. "Vivian," she said, "I know I don't deserve this, but I need to say I'm sorry." I leaned back in my chair, the sunflower painting looming behind me. "Sorry for what, Emily?" I asked, my voice calm but firm. She took a ragged breath. "For everything. The ring, the lies, the way I treated you. I was jealous of your strength, your home, your life with Harold. I thought making you small would make me bigger." I let her words hang in the air. Part of me wanted to lash out, to tell her how she'd shattered my dream of a grandchild, how she'd made me doubt myself. But I didn't. "Emily," I said, "you had a chance to be family, and you threw it away. I hope you find a way to live with that." I hung up, my hands steady, my heart lighter. Her apology didn't erase the pain, but it didn't define me anymore. I'd already moved on. A year later, Vivian's Voice was a national hit, airing in 20 states and helping thousands of seniors reclaim their dignity. The Vivian Foundation had recovered stolen assets for dozens of families, using the same kind of evidence Rachel had gathered against Emily. Marcus and Nicole got engaged in my garden, right under the magnolias, and she insisted I sit at the head of the table at their engagement dinner. "This is your home, Vivian," she said, her hand on mine. "You're the heart of it." As I stood in that garden, watering the flowers Harold and I had planted decades ago, I felt him smiling down on me. Emily had tried to steal my worth, my home, my family, but she'd only pushed me to find my strength. I wasn't invisible anymore. I was Vivian, a voice for those who'd been silenced, a mother whose son had come back to her, and a woman who'd risen from the ashes of betrayal to build something unstoppable. Folks, this journey taught me that no one's ever too old to stand up and fight for their dignity. Emily tried to make me invisible, but I found my voice, and it's louder than ever. Our elders deserve respect, not betrayal, and their strength can change the world. So, I'm curious, have you or someone you love ever had to reclaim your worth after being pushed aside? Drop your story in the comments. I'd love to hear it. Next time, we're diving into another tale of family secrets and justice, one that'll keep you on the edge of your seat. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button and let me know where you're watching from. Your support keeps me going. Thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I'll see you in the next one.